Thank you for those tips, Tim. And now it's time to check out Enslaved, Odyssey to the West, courtesy of my friend Tameen here from Ninja Theory, who's here to tell us all about it. Tameen, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So, Enslaved, Odyssey to the West. I'm looking at the screen right now. This, I've got to say, this is a beautiful game right here.
Yes, I would call it a post-apocalyptic game because the apocalypse has happened and now nature has just reclaimed the cities and landscapes. And we purposely wanted it to feel beautiful because there's so much danger in this world. I think it creates a good contrast, you know. Our writer is Alex Garland, who worked on 28 Days Later, Sunshine, and The Beach. And he's been working with us for 2 years. And he always says, play with expectations. Don't give people what they expect, just twist it. And that's kind of the thinking behind the art style.
So set the foundation for us. What kind of a game is Enslaved? It looks like, right off the bat, it looks like maybe action-adventure?
Yes, so our last game was Heavenly Sword, and this is, I'd say it's a more rounded action-adventure, whereas that game was more combat-based. Yeah. So this has puzzle-solving, platforming, as well as combat. And because the setup is that you're with another character, Trip, it means that the action has, it's not about just running in and being a hero. You have to think about how you're getting this other character across through this dangerous landscape. And it harks back to, I think in the old days, games were a bit more challenging, like they required you to think. And I think games now tend to start to be easier and tone down the challenge and be less cerebral. So it was trying to bring some of that back in, some of that tactical thinking back into it.
And how does that, the cerebral aspect, how does that factor into combat that we're seeing right here?
Okay, so this is very early on in the game. When you first come out, you're on a slave ship in the first mission, and you crash land into Grand Central. So this is the first mission where we're still teaching you the basics of combat. And we've gone for a combat system which is deep, but it's not, it doesn't have like hundreds of combos or anything. Yeah. Everything's there, everything's accessible. The main weapon is your telescopic staff. And so you've got your normal attacks, heavy, counters, evade attacks and so forth. But you've also got things like your stun move, dispersal attacks. The enemies in this game are quite tough. And we're playing here in easy mode just to demonstrate the game, but the enemies are really quite challenging. So when you've got 3 or 4 enemies, you've got to divide and conquer. Disperse them with your wide attack, stun one, take out the other, and then later on in the game, with Trip's help, she'll scan the mechs, and you'll be able to do things like rip off their weapons and use them against the enemies. So even at that level, you're still thinking more tactically.
And our main character that we're seeing here, who is this guy?
So he's the guy you play, Monkey. He's named Monkey because this game is based on Journey to the West, which is a 400-year-old Chinese novel. It's been adapted many times in different mediums. And he's a brute. He's a violent brute that doesn't like people. And Trip, she's from a community her father set up. They welcome survivors. They got education, schools, farming. They're like the new hope for humanity. They're setting up a new civilization. And when they're both trapped on the slave ship, she escapes through her cunning. He escapes through his brute force. And she notices that. So when the ship crashes and he's unconscious, she sticks a headband on him and reprograms it so that he has to do everything she says.
Okay.
And she's got a few, what we're seeing here on screen is, she's got a few tricks of her own, like she generally stays out of danger. But if she is put into a dangerous situation, she's got a last minute, a panic button, like an EMP blast that'll stun enemies, and you've got 10 seconds or so to rescue her. And as the game progresses, she gets more and more abilities. She can decoy enemies, she can scan them for weaknesses, so you become a true partnership. And so the journey is like the character dynamics, it works on multiple levels, on the story level and also in the gameplay level.
Okay. What other types of people do we encounter over the course of the game? Is it mainly just focused on these these two, or are we seeing some other faces in there?
Yeah, your main enemies are mechs of different sorts, but in terms of story characters, there is another character that you come across later in the game called Pigsy, who's a good old friend of Trip. He's very different to them. He's actually played by Richard Ridings, who was Roach in Heavenly Sword.
Oh, okay.
And he's a great character, and you then kind of pick up the journey, all three of you together. And that's quite fun. Other like Lindsay is Trip is played by Lindsay Shaw, and Monkey's Andy Serkis, also known as King Bohan in Heavenly Sword.
Good old Andy Serkis.
Yeah.
Did he do any motion capturing for this game?
Yes. We did a full shoot out in LA, like full performance capture.
Yeah.
Like, we've always believed that if you're serious about storytelling, then you should really go the full whack and capture faces, voice, body simultaneously. We shot it like you would shoot a film.
Okay.
And that's one of our main goals in the game, is to give players a compelling story that makes sense, where the voice acting fits, because it's still an area of gaming that lags quite far behind what we're used to in cinema. So in this section, we've just seen Monkey and Trip working together for the first time. He was causing a distraction so that she could run past the gun scout, and then she returned the favor, and so forth. So very quickly you start working as a team, and situations that Monkey couldn't do on his own, he can do with Trip.
So I'm going through some audience questions here. I have to say, to me, people very eager to find out whether Heavenly Sword 2 exists. I'll spare you that particular question, but the people are fans. The kids seem eager for Heavenly Sword 2.
I'll tell you, there's no Heavenly Sword 2.
There is none? Aww.
Not from us, anyway.
Let's see. Patrick Beck from Winnipeg is wondering about the different types of enemies. How many are there, and what sort of variety is there?
So you've got your basic combat mechs. You've got other mechs that are like electro-charged, so they do some range attacks. You've got your gun mechs. So there's kind of like a little family of basic mechs, which are, in some ways, they're old-fashioned mechs. You know, they're pistons and rust. But later on in the game, you'll see kind of next generation mechs, which are more advanced, and they're more animalistic. So you'll come across 3 or 4 of them, which are more like boss characters, if you like. And they have like synthetic muscles. They've got fluid systems instead of batteries. So when you're fighting them, they feel much more like creatures. Trip at one point actually swears that she could hear them breathing.
Jan from Malaysia was wondering, actually a question that you answered earlier is wondering about difficulty levels in the game. You mentioned that we're playing on easy, so I assume there are a variety?
Yeah. So even on, there's 3 difficulty levels, easy, medium, hard. Even on medium, the game is challenging. And on hard, it's pretty tough. But on any mission, you can choose your difficulty setting. You know, I always get frustrated when I'm playing again. It says, are you easy, medium, hard? You choose at the beginning, and then halfway through you want to change, and you can't. So we made it so that you can always change your difficulty setting.
So Daniel from Los Angeles, he's got a question about platform differences. Obviously, Heavenly Sword was a PlayStation 3 exclusive, so yeah. How has the experience been for you guys making this one multi-platform? And is it going to be roughly the same across the different platforms?
Yeah, it should be identical. I mean, we're using Unreal,
okay,
which is multi-platform anyway, and we've got a small core team that's making sure that the game's optimized for both platforms. And as developers, as designers and artists, they don't have to think about what platform they're developing on. So it's been really good, actually.
Let's see. Adam Beck from Winnipeg is wondering, what is the significance of the tattoos on Monkey?
They're actually scars, if you look closely, and we don't really go into the backstory behind them, but they're supposed to be, when he does get cornered by mechs in the past and he fights them, they're meant to be like almost burn marks from the patterns on the mechs onto his skin. Scarification, the new tattoo.
So, you want me to catch one of these dragonflies?
Jeffrey Van Gessel from Rotterdam is wondering, do you get other weapons besides the staff that Monkey was wielding back there at the beginning?
No, well, your staff is your main weapon, and it becomes a ranged weapon later on in the game, so you can use it to snipe enemies. But later on in the game, Trip will scan enemies and find weaknesses. So if you come across a particular gun mech, you can rip off its arm and use that temporarily for a short amount of time against the other mechs. The stun scouts that you come across, you can rip them apart and they'll stun other enemies. There's another mech that you can rip off its main weapon, stab it through its gut, and it starts to count down, aim him, and chuck him into other enemies. So
the combat evolves as you encounter different types of enemies in the game, you would say, rather than just, here's a machine gun, here's a sniper rifle, here's a new type of weapon every level.
And sometimes they'll have shields which you can't get through, so you've got to stun their shields and deplete it and then take them on. So, and it's more the mix of the enemies that make the combat tactical.
Let's see, Farad from Katy, Texas is wondering, do the two characters on screen get separated? And are there I guess puzzles that involve the two separating, going down different paths?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the game, she doesn't trust Monkey, so she doesn't allow him to get away, leave her alone, because she's scared. But as they go through the story, she trusts him more and then allows him to go off on his own. So there are some missions where you're off on your own as Monkey, and there are lots of puzzle missions where she's taking care of the systems and the machinery, and you're taking care of the other side of the puzzle.
Dave from Sacramento is wondering about the orange things he's collecting.
Okay, those are tech orbs. So if you take your time to explore, you'll find them lying around in the environment. And eventually Trip will start to upgrade your equipment. So you can upgrade your combat, your staff shot, your health. So there's a small RPG element in there.
All right, Sveen, I appreciate your time very much. I have to admit, I haven't seen a whole lot of Enslaved prior to this, but now suddenly after watching it, I'm very eager to play. Thank you very much for joining us on stage. Last question I've got for you before I'm going to let you go is, when do you expect it to be out in stores, and what are the platforms it's out on again?
So it's PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and it's this October.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for Enslaved Odyssey to the West. Now it's time to check out a new clip for Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Let's have a look.